Alright, starting this video off, I know it's been about 10, 11 months, almost a year since I've posted on this channel, but I've been away for a while because of school, chores, a lot of stuff keeping me busy, right? But this summer I'm back and I'm uploading videos all summer, so be prepared to learn with me. And yeah, so in today's video I'll be talking about internal and external range liquidity. So what that basically is you know, external is outwards and internal is inwards. So internal range liquidity is basically liquidity that's inside of a range, and then liquidity, well, external liquidity will be liquidity that's outside of a range, or that's at the peak or end of a range, right? So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of this here on gold on a 15-minute. Well, actually, let's go to the hour. Let's go to the hour, right? So an example of internal range liquidity, right? So let's say this is our range here. We're just going to use this as a displacement range, right? This here. So as we see here and here, this is both the high and the low of the range. What do you guys think that would be? I'm gonna give y'all 10 seconds to answer. It's been long enough. If you probably don't understand this, it's external because it's outwards. It's the end and the peak of the range. So it makes sense to call this external range liquidity because it's the top and the peak of this range. It's the end and the peak of this range. So that's external range liquidity. And liquidity points that are inside of this range will be called internal liquidity because it is in the range. So do you see this low here and this low? Those would be internal range liquidity points, or internal range sell side liquidity, right? And how you would want to use these is you would want to, like, let's say you want to see price come to a discount, right? And if you want to see it come to a discount, you want to see some sort of liquidity purge happen, right? And liquidity purge would be it purging these two lows, in which it did. So it came to a discount while purging these two internal range liquidity points. It doesn't have to come all the way down here to a external range liquidity point, which would be probably too far for the market to go, because if it comes too low, it'll just waste all its volume. So what it has to do is has to take out internal range liquidity so it doesn't waste too much time and still heads where it needs to go in time. Got me? So then here you can also see highs here. This swing high and this swing high here. That's also internal range liquidity because it's inside of this range. It's not the peak or the bottom of the range, right? I'm gonna show you a couple more examples of this, right? So this here, see this giant displacement here. Let's drop down in the 15-minute, wherever that range is, right? Exactly here. Okay. So here, right? And I'll give you a tip real quick before we continue, right? I'm showing you what it is, but I'm going to show you how to find these ranges in order to see where external and internal liquidity is. So you draw the ranges, right, based off it can be either a large displacement, like something like this here. And if you guys don't remember, displacement is when price moves aggressively in one direction while creating fair value gaps. And that's exactly what this did. Because as we see giant, large red candles, which is bullish on my side because that's how my color preset is. Red is bullish and white is bearish. But we see large red bullish candles that create fair value gaps on the way up. So this will be considered a displacement range, right? And then as you see here, this liquidity point is internal liquidity because it is inside the range, right? So that is an example of internal range liquidity. And then what is external? External would be the top and the low of the range, right? So your internal is here and your external is the top and the bottom of the range, right? So it's really dealing with P&D, which is premium and discount, and the lows and highs that form within that range. So this is a perfect example of internal and external range liquidity here, because as you see, I just drew this fib here, and we're gonna drag it out just so you guys can see it better. Drag it out about right here, right? Okay, so you see this range here, right? This is the discount, this is the premium, this is the high of the range, this is the low of the range, and this is the equilibrium, right? What we're mainly focusing on is what range, well, what highs and lows form in between this range, right? So I'm gonna give you at least 5-10 seconds to see some lows and highs that form in between this range here. I'll give you 10 seconds. Alright, that should be enough time for you to look at this, right? So, as we see here, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, and we have 5. Right, but to make this look better on your side, to make it clean for you, we're going to use trend lines to make it a bit cleaner. So all these will be internal range liquidity because it is inside the what? It is inside the low and high of this range. See this? You see how these lines are inside of it? See how they're inside of this large range here, this line is inside of this area, right? Then you got more. You got this high here. Oh, if I can get it. But whatever. You got this high here. Turn off the magnet. And then you got this high here. All that, right? So this would be internal range liquidity, right? Internal, 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 internal. And then you have the externals, which is the low of the range, and then the high of the range, right? And like I said before, how you create these ranges is there's 2 ways, right? The first way is seeing a purge of some sort of liquidity on any sort of time frame, right? When it purges some liquidity, which would be like relative equal lows or one singular low or low resistance liquidity, right? If it purges any of that or just liquidity in general, your range has already been created. You just have to locate it, right? And as you see here, it did both ways. It purged liquidity and it displaced, right? Because as you see here, it moved like crazy and it created a fair value gap going down, so we would consider that displacement, right? And then it took out these lows here. These lows here. It took out these lows. And if you guys notice, if you guys watch my previous videos, you could see that this is low resistance liquidity. That's why it came down here so aggressively and so smoothly, because it was low resistance. So if you have common sense, of course we all do, but if you think, you could easily understand that low resistance means it doesn't have a lot of resistance to go through, right? It's just simple. So I'm gonna give you at least a couple more examples of this. I don't want to make this too long because I know people got jobs to work, they got bills to pay, and they got stuff to handle, they got kids to take care of. So we're not gonna make this too long. We're gonna go on the hour just to find some more like this, right? So as you see here, right? See this range here? See this giant displacement down, creating fair value gaps as we're heading down, right? So we will want to take this and here. You can also drag it down to here, but this is the whole displacement move, so you would want to use, and actually, let me mention that, when it comes to the displacement moves, you would want to use the low and the high of that displacement move, right? So if I drop down, right, and go back to that same point, wherever it is, it's all the way over here, right? You see how I used the low of the range, so like when it actually stops displacing, right? So the high up here, since this is a bearish move, this is when it started displacing. This is the high it created when it started displacing, right? And this is the low it created when it stopped. So that's what you want to use. You wouldn't want to use this down here because it been stopped displacing. So your actual range would be from here to here, correct? Because at this low is when it stopped displacing to the downside, right? So this would be your range right here, right? So obviously, I'm sure we know the external points. The external points would be the high of the range and the low of the range. That's our external points, right? Now, let's see some internal points of liquidity, right? So obviously, we have one here. We have another here. We have another here. We have another here. And we got another here. Then we got another here. I'm just showing you examples of internal liquidity, right? But once you learn more of the concepts, you can see how this can be useful, right? Because normally what you will want to use with internal range liquidity, if price wants to head somewhere, right, it's not going to hesitate doing that. So what it'll try to do is it's not going to do some outrageously stupid move to take out external range liquidity, then come down. Because think about it, right? Think about it. Whenever you're running, right, you don't want to sprint at the start. Or like, let's say if you're competing in the Olympics, right, and you're sprinting, right, or you're doing track. You don't want to use all your energy at the start, because at the end you're going to be tired. Same thing with price. Price cannot use all its volume at one time. So it has to be very efficient about its volume so it can continue doing what it wants to do in an efficient motion. And that's what price does. And it does it efficiently by taking out internal range liquidity so it could have some sort of momentum or take out some buy stops or some stop losses before heading the other way. And that's exactly what the market does. And actually, we can see proof of this in replay mode, shall we? Let's just go right here and see. We're not gonna make this too fast. Wait, not too quick, right? So let's see. We could use where's my drawing tool? We can use this high and this low here, right? Because as you see, the way we created this is because it took out liquidity to the downside, right? That's our range because it took out liquidity down here, right? So this is our range, right? So as we see, if we look for some confluences, I'm not going to try to confuse you. I just want to keep this strictly on internal range and external range liquidity only, right? But using this, I can see that the market wants to go up. Now watch how price action acts. Just watch, right? So let's mark out our internal highs and lows, right? Got a high here. Got a high here. And remember, whenever the market wants to head somewhere, it has to take out liquidity first, right? So an example of this would be if the market, if you know that the market wants to go to the bearish side, right? It must take out some buy side liquidity, right? That's what it has to do. Because as you see here, it's doing it now. We know that the market wants to go up, right? But it had to take out some sort of sell side liquidity. And that sell side liquidity would be right here. So it came down and took this out before it could go up, right? Now let's refocus back on the internal and external range liquidity, right? To show you what I'm talking about when it comes to the market being efficient, right? So look at this. Dropped even lower. We adjust our range. Okay. You see this? Look at that, right? So if you notice here, we took out this high, right? Creating a bullish break and market structure setup. Look at this. At the end of the market, close to the end of New York, we created an internal low, right? And like I said, since we want it to go up, it has to break some sell side liquidity or take out some sell side liquidity before going up. And that's what it's doing, right? So let's continue. As you see here, the market is steadily going up because we are out of session, but we're about to enter session soon. As you see, it did it again. Did it once again. It came down to these lows here and took them out. See that? It came down and took them out before heading back up because we know the market wants to go up. So if we continue, you see that the market eventually goes up, right? Because obviously the market is not going to immediately go up, but since it has other things to do first, it must do those things first before going up. And one of those things was it taking out liquidity before heading up. And that's exactly what it did. So I don't want to make this video too long. I'm going to end it here right at the 14:15 mark, which is like 14 minutes. But yeah, you guys have a good day. I'll be making more videos this summer. Enjoy.